Although I have made a few videos defending dream stans in particular, there's something that's undeniable all of stan Twitter has an issue with. This includes Charlie's fandom, K-pop, Minecraft, YouTube, any, but especially Minecraft, and it is death threats. So, a little bit of background first. Most of stan Twitter is consistent of minorities, therefore there tend to be more canceling situations than anywhere else. I want to start this off by saying canceling isn't really the right word. They more just create threads and ask content creators to address them. I actually don't think there's anyone that's been genuinely canceled who's given an apology. This being, people use a lot of hurtful words towards content creators that have messed up, or not even content creators. Sometimes big stan accounts created by children will make a mistake and they'll get DM after DM telling them to kill themselves and die. Now again, not many people do this. It's still a small portion, but it's big enough, and no matter the size, a death threat from one person can be extremely damaging. People have gotten so okay with KYS and die jokes to people they don't know. It's become so normalized, and it's not at all a good thing. As a gay woman of color, yes, I have a place to speak on this, so hear me out. The premise of this video will actually be on how sending death threats to people who mess up is very performative. Disclaimer, this is not the communities as a whole, do not generalize. A trigger warning for the video will be mentions of suicide, death threats, and things along those lines. Also, this is not specific to Minecraft YouTube, but this video will target us. It's a problem everywhere. Leave a like and comment your thoughts. So when I say death threats, I'm referring to kill yourself or die jokes. Say a Minecraft content creator messes up. They said something unknowingly hurtful to minorities, which happens the majority of the time. Maybe something resurfaced from years ago and it was socially acceptable, or they're just uneducated. People have a right to be upset. They have a right to feel angry that their comfort people turned out to say something that has negative impacts on them by being a minority. There are many ways people go about this, but I have noticed a pattern. White people, or those unaffected, go way too overboard. Whenever something like this happens, there are threads educating the person because the person normally doesn't have any evil intent. It was a mistake. Something we all make. I'm all about holding people accountable for their mistakes, but I'm not about ruthlessly punishing them unless it's genuinely horrible, like Shane Dawson, being plain racist, things like that are explicitly wrong, and when the other person saying or doing it know it's wrong. I am glad the stan community goes out of their way to educate their content creators, but some send death threats, which isn't okay if it's a mistake. Back to before, the people sending death threats and saying them are always the minority that wasn't affected or is white. Most of the time they're just white. Death threats don't help anyone. As a dark Indian, when my favorite content creator mocked Indian culture, I was pretty taken aback. They didn't understand why that was wrong, but when they did, they proved they learned and didn't do anything similar in the future. Now, the threads educating them I appreciated. They made me feel understood, heard, and most of all, comforted. Now, what did not help me, the affected minority, was those unaffected in their DMs telling them to off themselves. How does that help me in any way? It doesn't. It doesn't educate the content creator, it does not bring less racism into the world, it doesn't comfort me, it just delays the apology from the content creator because now they're probably shitting themselves in anxiety. Overall, it brings more bad into the world than good. Spend your time linking petitions, making educating threads, donating, etc., because that actually helps me. So why do people do this? Why do white people start mindless arguments, ruthlessly hating on people for small mistakes and screaming over the actual affected minorities? Well, this is where the performative activism comes in. So a lot of people view politics or things like these as pastimes, an opportunity to get angry at someone and justify your actions. I understand this. I really enjoy debate, arguing, and things in those general categories. A lot of people take guilty joy in just being mean to a person, and I think that everyone can relate to that at least a little. In fact, I used to do this too. A couple months back, my friend ended up being pretty ignorant. I designed this whole quite mean letter for her, telling her why what she said was wrong. My sister saw this happening and asked what I was doing. When I explained, she said, "Do you really care what your friend said was a little wrong, or do you just get adrenaline out of doing this?" And I couldn't answer. She said, "How is writing this letter helpful? Your friend isn't maliciously any of this. She's just a little bit stupid. How do you think writing this funny but mean letter will educate her or put more good into the world? Like, what's your goal?" I couldn't answer because it wouldn't bring more good into the world. A lot of people who send death threats and DMs fail to ask themselves these questions. They take joy in speaking about politics without having the burden of actually caring, just like I did in that moment. I fortunately learned from them, but I believe that's why. It's fun. It's fun ganging up on people you think are in the wrong. It's fun getting encouraged to be mean to someone you dislike. It's just fun. I think the main reason why people send death threats, whether that joy comes from being a part of something, adrenaline, or more, it's just fun. So now that we've covered why and how it's performative, let's dig a little bit deeper into what those either male, straight, or white people like to do with this information, and these callouts on their performativeness. There was a single tweet that recently appeared on my timeline. It wasn't much at all, it was just pointing out that death threats are very normalized in the Minecraft community. Since this tweet was part of the inspiration for this video, though I only read it once, I'll link the tweet author in the description. Anyways, they made very good points from what I can remember. All they said was that it wasn't very helpful to minorities to spend your time helping us in some other way, and they were overall helpful. I agreed with it, but the quote tweets did not. The quote tweets brought up a very common but very invalid argumentative style, the strawman argument. So for those of you who don't know, the strawman argument, let's just say someone asks you, which do you prefer, night or day? Now this person really prefers night, but you respond with day. Now in a strawman argument, the night supporter might say, oh my god, why do you hate night? No one support this day supporter, they hate night. What? You never said that you hated night, you just said that you preferred day. Now that person is picking a similar subject and making it sound like your opinions when it is not. Now, in this case, the quote tweets were asking the tweet author why they cared more about people receiving death threats than minorities' feelings. What? When was that ever said? The author never once said that was the case. In fact, they provided information on how to help minorities. That is a classic strawman argument. They said absolutely nothing about not caring about minorities' feelings when it comes to something about this. Only death threats aren't very helpful to them. I laughed when I saw those quote tweets, mostly in annoyance though. Obviously the tweet author cares about minorities, they just don't condone death threats. How do you even get that from saying death threats are wrong? And it wasn't like anyone was recently canceled that day, they were just saying in general. Minecraft Twitter does have an issue with sending death threats that aren't joking, and the quote tweets clearly felt called out by that. So they literally weaponized minorities' feelings to kill the idea that death threats are wrong when they are. I think what a lot of people just in general fail to ask themselves before arguing with someone on the internet is, what is my goal? Before you tell someone to kill themselves because they made a joke 4 years ago, what is your goal? Is it to help minorities? Is it to cause the person pain? Because the two aren't interchangeable. There are obvious cases where people certainly don't deserve platforms at all, and nowhere in this video am I referring to those people. I'm talking about the children, the stan accounts that delete their accounts because of all the pressure, the burner accounts who said they were soulmates with Dream and then got death threats when they were, if it was real, going through a delusion, and everyone else. If what you say isn't going to help minorities and your justification is, it was to help minorities, don't say it. Death threats hurt minorities. They make every time a minority gets upset a cancel culture moment. That's all we're labeled as anymore, cancel culture. Because of the death threats, no one takes minorities seriously anymore. No one takes our feelings seriously because of the performative activists who think they're saving us one by telling someone to kill themselves. Newsflash, they're not saving us. Cancel culture gives white people and men and straight cis people a way to not listen to us because they can just go, cancel culture is crazy, instead of minorities are crazy. They say that instead because saying minorities are crazy sounds much, much worse than just calling us cancel culture. It gives them an out. If you send death threats and you think you're being helpful, you're giving privileged people a way to not listen to our voices, an excuse to ignore our voices. You're taking our voices and ruining them. No one is going to want to listen to people associated with cancel culture anymore, which sucks because everything minorities express discomfort towards is labeled as cancel culture. The death threat culture, the angry woman culture, the angry woman of color culture. That is more of a threat to minorities than anything, making our voices evil. No one wants to listen to something they think is evil, and there are a good amount of people who think cancel culture is the world's #1 evil. As a minority, if you are watching this and send death threats, listen to me, and please stop. You are not helping. Oh, but who cares what men and white people think? LOL, I do. Wake up, buddy. Men and white people kind of hold all the power in our system. That's why it's dangerous how much this new generation of children hates cancel culture, or us for that matter. I hate what cancel culture has become, but not in the way they do. I hate cancel culture not educating, because it ruins minorities' voices, and privileged people hate it because they are the ones that hear the ruined voices and get warped ideas. To be clear, I don't think cancel culture is necessarily a culture, so when I say I hate it, I'm referring to the culture, not the concept. I think the concept has always been there. This is just the first time we're labeling it. Minorities have always gone rightfully upset about things. There are just instances where this cancel culture is very good. And I'm sure if the concept cancel culture was called cancel culture back in the day, people during, say, MLK's time would probably go, oh look, now they're trying to cancel segregation. Point is, it's not a culture, but a concept that's always existed. I don't think the raw concept is wrong or bad in any way. We should always call out things we see wrong. That's how society in general progresses. We would not have progressed at all without the structure of what we now call cancel culture leading us there. Now, what I do not like is men or white people speaking over minorities when it comes to this. Now that we've labeled it, it's easier to destroy. I don't support what doesn't bring overall good into the world or help minorities. Death threats don't do that. And if you choose to ignore me or other people of color or women or LGBTQ folks or neurodivergent people, you are performative and you are part of the problem. Another disclaimer, obviously you're allowed to be angry at someone. You have every right to feel disappointed, feel betrayed, etc. if a content creator or a person in your life turns out to be uneducated. Keep in mind I'm saying uneducated, not full-on bigoted, but back to before, you can be mad. But I've noticed it's not the affected group getting mad, it's the unaffected group getting mad for them. We attack ignorant people too much, and before you attack me for saying that, you probably don't know what ignorant means. Ignorance is just not knowing, and you can't know what you don't know. Neither can you blame them for not knowing what they haven't been exposed to. The word ignorant gets thrown around so much, especially about bigots. No, bigots are not ignorant. They know what they're saying, they know the harm, they know their words can affect people, they know what they're talking about, but they're bigoted, not ignorant. If you're going to tell people to kill themselves, make sure at least that they're bigoted and not just stupid. Everyone makes mistakes. What matters is that they don't repeat them. At the end of the day, stop getting angry for minorities, stop weaponizing their hurt as an excuse for you to tell randos to kill themselves, stop thinking death threats somehow helps us, and please stop digging into people's pasts unless it's really that bad and they genuinely don't deserve a platform for it. Thank you all for listening. We're at the end of the video on how giving death threats to people while canceling them is performative activism. Thank you again, and my name's Tony. Now go hecking subscribe.